MOOBment. I'm your host, Laurie Ann, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. I also am extremely grateful for all of the support and MOOB mail and all of the input that you mothers of only boys, as well as those who love us, have given me thus far. So keep it coming, and let's just make the MOOBment our community. I have a great guest with me today, and I have to let you know that I haven't met him in person, but I feel like I know him because I've been following him on Instagram, like so many of you do. And the different reels that he's put out have really just spoken to me. And I thought that, well, if that's speaking to me, I think it will speak to a lot of our listeners here. So I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Michael Milobsky. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you for having me. So nice to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And I will let you know that Dr. Milobsky is a pediatrician. And while that is a very noble profession, he is also a dad of 7. So I think that is just as noble. And I'm going to ask you to just tell us in your own words a little bit about you professionally, personally, and help our listeners get to know you.
Sure. I've been a pediatrician for almost 30 years, and that's about as long as I've been a parent. We started our married and parent lives on the East Coast, where I was doing medical school and residency and fellowship, and then we moved out to Denver, Colorado, right around 2000. When we moved out here, we had our first 3 children we had 3 boys in 4 years. We had 3 boys under the age of 4. And then as our next 4 kids were all girls, kind of right in a row. So we have 3 sons and 4 daughters. And it's, how our household was one thing and then it completely shifted to a different thing, which was very interesting. And now all my kids are mostly grown up. I mean, my 7th child is 16 years old, and most of our kids don't live at home anymore. And we have grandchildren now. And through that time, I've been a pediatrician. I started my career as a specialist, pediatric emergency, inpatient, and critical care. And then I opened up my own practice about 14 years ago, private practice, and been doing that ever since. And over the last, several years, with my own health challenges and overcoming a lot of my own, issues, trying to move forward, I started to really think more about these things deeply and emotionally as far as parenting and, especially parenting boys. And my private practice, one of the biggest recurrent issues was how boys increasingly seem to be getting labeled and pathologized for things that are normal. And the system seems to be really turning against boys. And so that has been a big personal topic and topic that I've been passionate about talking about also as a parent of sons, although my sons are much older. So
yeah,
that's where I am now.
You can appreciate that because of the MOOBment, and I started the MOOBment. I'm pretty much an open book here. I just turned 64, and I too am a grandma of 3, and I have 3 grown sons. So yeah, all good. So we've been both of us around the block, and so I have been, I tell my audience all the time, I am a hybrid kind of person. I'm a little bit fluff and I like my chick lit, but I'm also a little bit of deep dives, and I really do like learning, and I'm an ongoing learner. And I have pursued a lot of books, articles, research on raising boys. I think when my boys were young, I should have done a lot of it then. I didn't have the time, and now I have the time, and I'm luckily enough have a grandson. So I've been pursuing all of that, and some of the things I've read, both for, the outcome of boys nowadays, culturally, biologically, are really a little scary. And being a boy mom, and a lot of our listeners being boy moms, I think I think this podcast has actually, it's gone from some of the times we talk about things like gender disappointment and how other people view us as all boy moms, but it's also evolved into the biology and the culture that we're living in, and how boys are faring in that. So a little bit alarming, but I think with an understanding, we can all do something about it. And, who knows, maybe we're in the process of having a boy revolution, just like the girls have had their revolution. And Now they think they can do anything, and they can.
And I think, to your point, one of the big things that come up when I talk about this is, well, what about girls? And as a parent of both, I can tell you, this is not one of those things that is a zero-sum game. It's not either or. It's that we can continue to support and honor girls and women, and at the same time recognize that there's an issue with boys that needs to be moved forward, addressed, recognized, and approached differently. They're not mutually exclusive. And
Absolutely.
I think that there's this, binary thinking that kind of inhabits too much in, this process or this idea. And I don't know if you have had it, I'm sure you have, but one of the books that I think outlines your point exactly about the bigger issue culturally, academically around boys is Richard Reeves' book of Boys and Men. I think if you are a boy parent, no matter what age your children are, this is a book that you should be reading and understanding about the bigger issues surrounding boys in our culture, educationally, socially, and I think that really is an eye-opener, and it was for me.
Yeah, actually, maybe we'll try to reach out to him about coming on the podcast. I have an author, Ruth Whitman, who wrote a book called Boy Mom. And if you haven't read that one, again, it's from her personal perspective, having 3 boys and raising 3 boys as a feminist, and having that conflict of being a feminist herself, but now being a boy mom, and how to pretty much navigate through all that. So yeah, it's interesting. And I guess one of the things that I've thought about as far as boys is pretty much, you don't want to treat them differently, but sometimes I think we because of our culture, we think that we need, boys think they need to be macho. They need to be masculine. They shouldn't cry. They shouldn't experience tenderness and hugging, but in effect, they need it more than girls. And they're not getting it, and that maybe that's part of the reason they don't communicate as well and so forth. On a pediatric level, how do you feel about that? Do you agree with that?
I agree on some level that as we are enculturated or socialized to approach boys differently, I think that tide is changing. I think that there's a lot more emotional awareness about emotional needs in general, both with children in general and boys specifically. And I think the more deeper issue rooted in neuroscience and development is that at the youngest ages, when kids are entering caregiver settings, whether that's preschool or kindergarten, there are fundamental differences that are part of boy development that look different than girl development, and that those differences need to be recognized and honored and supported. But what I see more often is in structured settings all the way down to preschool, normal and healthy differences that separate boys from girls developmentally, because their brains really do develop differently among different pathways and at different times and different timelines. They have different strengths that show up at different places. Now, once again, you can't say that everything is 100% applies to every child, but as a pediatrician for 30 years and someone who studies this, the generalities hold that more often than not, these are true. And that more and more I see these differences being labeled and pathologized, and parents being told something is wrong, you need to go get evaluated, you need your child, your son is X or Y. And that's because, no, they don't act and function like the girls in their classroom setting, but they are acting and functioning exactly as what's normal for a boy brain at that age.
So
and
I
to
actually
not recognize this and to not honor this is really doing a lot of damage.
I actually wanted to ask you about that, because you did put a reel out there that I took note of about boys in kindergarten, and that maybe boys should not be starting kindergarten until age 6 instead of age 5, because they need that extra year. But as I thought about that, I actually have a grandson who is in kindergarten right now, and he's doing really great, and it's great. And like you say, generalities, how he's doing in relation to the girls as far as sitting in that circle time, I couldn't tell you. I'm not in the classroom. We'll have to ask the teacher. But my thought when I heard that reel, are we, by doing that and starting boys later than girls, are we not having them, lag behind from the beginning and feeling like, well, the girls are ahead, the girls are smarter, the girls can go at 5, I have to wait till 6. And what does that do socially to them? So
I think it depends on how it's presented. When this issue is now being looked at, because if you look all the way up the educational ladder, boys are falling behind further and further. High school graduation rates, college entrance, college graduation rates, grad school entrance boys are falling off the radar. Girls and women are dominating this, and a lot of it, there's a really strong idea that a lot of it has to do with when boys enter the educational ladder, how they are being approached, dealt with, and it creates a mark, and it creates a psychologic, shall we say, a psychologic scar, if you want to put it something, that follows them. And when this issue has been studied around other cultures, kids in general, and boys especially, are approached differently when they have that extra year of maturity. They're not so quick to label. They are celebrated and reinforced more positively by the educational system and the caregivers, which, for better or for worse, is still delivered by women most of the time. And that's not something that's so easy to fix. It's not something that's going to be all of a sudden, let's get all these men into early childhood education. It'd be wonderful. It's just unlikely to be something that is so easy or is accessible in a short-term way. But boys, when they are given that extra year, because of the differential developmental speed in certain skills that are around success in school, executive functioning, self-regulation, all that does improve, seemingly, and this is what Richard Reeves talks about this a lot in his book, how they progress in their outcomes through the system.
Yeah.
And the idea that we're somehow going to be scarring them or hurting them, my kids, I don't see that as a parent. I think that a lot of it has to do with how the message is delivered and how and the environment that they're in and the reinforcement that they get. But I really don't see how it hurts or harms them. I see that
well, maybe it helps them more than it would harm them.
Supports them for what their normal development pattern looks like.
Right. I wonder too, in hearing you say that, that means they also, if they start school a year later, they're home a year later. How much good does that do? And I believe it does, having a little bit more time in their home for kids that are home, that have that, versus a daycare situation or so forth. And also, how important is it maybe to look at this in a slightly different way of attacking the problem and maybe educating the teachers and going out there and saying, hey, we need teachers to understand that there's a difference. We need teachers to say, we're not going to ask these boys to sit quietly with their hands in their lap in a circle because, they're going to rebel. They're not able to do that yet. So, to me, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's the answer, because there are teachers out there who are in this wonderful profession, hopefully for the right reasons, and want to help kids. And maybe they need to be re-educated on how best and that it is okay to deal differently with the girls and the boys when there is a valid biological reason.
And I think that answer, like everything, all of these are nuanced. One of the nuance of that is that the system of formal structured school, which really starts at kindergarten, has been very much influenced by the No Child Left Behind Act, that everybody is teaching to tests and standards and metrics, and that then has to do with funding and money. So the downstream pressure on the kindergarten teachers is that your kids need to be ready on all these metrics that you can measure by first grade and by second grade. And that is very different than it was in the 80s and 90s. And so that is disadvantaging and hurting boys, because boys are often not ready in a lot of the ways that they need them to meet those strict metrics that they are being measured and funded on and judged on. And then that downstream pressure is now coming into the preschool space. Yes, I'm sure that in early childhood education, teachers get this stuff, but it is being overridden by these higher concerns that have nothing to do with really understanding normal, healthy development and how to best support that. I think that my sons, because of our school choices, they were in single gender education for a lot of that time, which is, I understand that that's a tricky question. It's definitely not for everybody, but I'm telling you, when you're dealing with boys at the earliest level, it really, we saw some benefits that the class was much more tuned to their needs.
Look,
And
I hear you on that. My kids went to a co-ed schools, but I can tell you they went to camp in the summer. And in camps, they segregate the boys and the girls, and some of these camps are all boy, girl, and it does wonders. And the interesting thing is the focus to me, although I never had daughters, but I have friends who have daughters and nieces, was always on the girls, that the girls shouldn't have to worry about how they dress for the boys or whatever. But the focus seems never to be on the boys, that maybe the boys need that as much as the girls. So I think so much of it is, and we're opening our eyes. There are all these books, all this research is out there. And so, hopefully we're heading in the right direction. And I think also, and I'd love you to comment on this, that, again, that early childhood age, that oftentimes parents, moms and parents are the first teachers. So what can we, and you as a pediatrician, as a dad, offer our listeners here, most of whom are moms of boys, of only boys, that what can they do in their homes to, focus on the needs of their young sons, to give them the best possible beginnings? How do you deal with that tantrum or that, constant physicality all the time?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here to talk about. I would refer your listeners, one of the best books that we didn't pick up until maybe our second or third boy, but I consistently refer people to understand how the emotional lives of boys come out differently and how to best parent because what we want for all of our kids, we want the superpower that I think all of us understand in the world of AI and high automation and machine learning is emotional intelligence, and parenting kids, especially boys, in a way that understands their unique path to positively expressing emotions and being in touch and verbalizing all emotions and being aware of them in a way they're different. Girls do it much more intuitively at a younger age because of their verbal development and verbal skills, and boys need to do it also, but need a slightly different approach to bring it out and to encourage it in a way that aligns with just how their brains develop first, which is much more in the motor and task-oriented way, and then the verbal, emotional regulation later than girls. But there's still ways to do this. I think one of the most powerful things that I remember leaning into when my kids were young was understanding that boys were better able to communicate their feelings or something around them when they're also engaged in a task. Well, so when my sons were dysregulated, let's say, and I'd said, we're just going to go throw rocks in the pond and do that, and then we did that, and then while they were doing that, they were able to then access a little bit easier this vocabulary that seemed to escape them at the time when they're highly emotional or charged. It was just different than my daughters, who were just able to just like find that and be able to do it a lot more intuitively. That was just a simple shift in parenting that I remember, because I didn't do it with my first son, and it took me a while with our second, but with our third, we kind of were, oh wow, we read this book. This is completely new to us. We had our kids starting in our 20s. We didn't know anything. And so that is an example of something that, as a parenting awareness and parenting shift, can, like you said, foster this improved way of communication and awareness and emotional intelligence.
How much in the way of emotions should we bring out with our boys? I think boys are, and dads sometimes, parents sometimes are so concerned about their boys being a mama's boy, their boys not being in touch with their feelings because it's too effeminate, whatever. But I think, boys need that. They really do need that. The statistics I've read about, how much more likely boys grow up to be angry, murderers, school shooters, whatever it may be, because they don't have that emotional side, it's all suppressed. So how do moms deal with that? Should we hug our boys more? What should we do to have them be comfortable with that?
Right. Well, I think the first answer to that is, and I'm speaking as a father, is recognizing how to be able to show up in your relationships in a healthy way has everything to do with understanding your own emotional life, your ability to self-regulate, and your ability to lean into that in a positive way. And like you pointed out, that was not something boys of my generation and even the elder millennials who are my oldest sons, that they didn't get that message. But that is becoming very clear, and it's been very clear to me as a father, and it took me far too long to recognize that. And thank God it's never too late, and I'm able to do it now and working on it now, although no one's perfect and neither am I. But to be able to recognize that is an essential skill for your son and men to be able to be the best versions of themselves as adults, period. And when you say, well, how to do it and what's the best way to do it, there are, as parents, well, the first is the recognition that boys express emotions differently than girls, being tuned into how that expression comes out and how to give them space that all feelings are okay to express, even if every behavior is not, because boys will become a little more dysregulated, a little more physical, and it's okay to set boundaries around those, but still give them the message that your feelings are valid, and naming them and talking about them and expressing them in whatever way we can is the primary goal of raising emotionally healthy people and emotionally healthy boys especially. But there are ways that we do that do look fundamentally different than girls, depending on the child, and because of the unique way that boy brains develop. I can't talk enough about this book, Wonder of Boys, which has been out now for years, but that's the point. That's what they talk about, is that approaching boys from an emotional, healthy standpoint and giving that space does look different. But it is something that we can all learn as parents and do better. And it's never too late, by the way.
Right.
There's no expiration date on that.
So what I'm hearing, it's how you approach them, where you approach them, when you approach them,
Sure.
that makes all the difference.
100%.
Yeah.
And because they use different tools at different ages than girls do for the same types of thing when they're very young.
Right. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit, because we do have some people that are out there listening and they heard the word pediatrician. And I did ask for some input from our listeners, and they said, wow, you have a pediatrician who is there to answer our questions. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about your practice in a minute, but I just want to ask you, for all those moms that are looking to get a hold of the pediatrician, what is something that you think moms in general, new moms, young moms, worry about too much that they really should not worry about so much?
Gosh. So I think one of the most important pieces of advice I give to every new parent when they come in or when I talk to them, because I'm recognizing that we live, and people are, for better or for worse, parenting in the age of information overload and social media, is that you have to be able to tune out the noise and trust yourself more. That your experience, your journey, your parenting journey, does not and should not have to look in any particular way, or the way it's presented to you on social media, or the way it's presented to you by parenting and wellness influencers and experts. That you should lean into and access your family and your network, but it doesn't have to look any particular way. And I'll give you an example, like, Harvard did a study on developmental outcome and parenting things, and the things that they ultimately came to was that the most important factors in your children being emotionally and developmentally healthy was parents showing up, being responsive, and being warm. Now, when you hear that, most people's response is, of course. I mean, that's like the most obvious thing, right? Which tells me that most parents already know most of what they need to know to be the best parent for their child, without accessing any script, without accessing any influencer or anything on social media. You already have it downloaded in you. And so to be able to trust yourself more, and what helps with that is having a network and having a support system outside your immediate home. One of the biggest things that we experienced, we moved very far away from our family of origin. We moved from East Coast to Denver. We were kind of out here on an island, and it was really hard. It's hard to develop a community of friends in a village around you that, even when they're not related to you. And we didn't have involved family, so it wasn't like an option for us. But for people who, if you have that, to stay close to that, that is, in my opinion, in my parenting journey and what I see every day, that is so valuable and provides so much ability to grow and so much to be the best version of yourselves as a parent when you have involved grandparents on each side who are engaged and want to be part of raising your children. That is invaluable, and it doesn't matter where you live. If you have that, that trumps almost, in my opinion, everything else.
Do I have to basically say that I did not pay you to say that?
No, we didn't have a single conversation before the podcast at all.
Because there is nothing that gives me more joy than spending time with my grandchildren. And I say all of the time, I could have a headache, I could have had a bad day, whatever it is, and you put the baby in my arms. And I love my children, my daughters-in-law, everybody up to wazoo. But there's something about that grandchild that, it all goes away. It's all about them. It all goes away. And 100%. Being blessed enough to be able to grandparent and, my children are wonderful and generous and luckily live nearby enough to allow me in their lives. And, it is. I so agree with you. It's a blessing on both sides. It's nice to have the help.
And I don't know if you've seen this, but the research on what it does for the grandparents is astounding in terms of grandparent mental health, brain health, long-term, risk of dementia and all those things is completely transformative when you are deeply involved in the lives of your grandchildren.
Wow.
So look that up.
That's a whole other show, and I'd really like to go. I'd really like to go there.
But the point is, from a parenting standpoint, if you have that, you should lean into that ahead of any other seductive location that might have better weather or palm trees or whatever it is. You're going to get more out of that for your children and at you as parents than any location, in my opinion.
Okay, now I feel a little guilty because I spend several months in the winter in Florida. My kids are up north.
It's okay.
But that's okay. I go back and forth a lot. Still, I'm certainly there when they need me, and they know that.
But those are the two pieces of advice that I give out uniformly to new parents, that they want to know, hey, what's the most important thing I need to understand or know at the outset of this journey? Those are my number one and number two.
Interestingly enough, and I am a mom, I do have a teaching degree, but I'm really not a parenting professional. I end this podcast every episode by saying three things really. Hug your boys, trust your instincts, and remember where all boy moms belong is right here. That's my mantra, my demonstrative love and hugging my kids, my grandchildren, and trusting your instincts, because I do believe if it comes from a place of love and you do the best you can and you're present with them, that's probably good enough. So
agreed.
Yeah. I wish I had another hour and a half to do this, because we could talk forever, and I have a list here of a lot of topics that people sent in to me.
Want to do a speed round? We can do a speed round
as a matter of fact, I was just about to go there. I am going to, I did ask for some, we have this MOOB mail thing where people send in questions, and I did get one question that I promised one of my listeners that I was going to ask you, so I'm going to do that. So this is our MOOB mail.
Oh boy, it's that time. Ooh, mail's here. Your voice meets mine. From your heart straight to our trail. Let's open up that mail.
This comes from Shelly, and Shelly said, my son plays sports, and between practices and games, there are constant bumps, falls, and hits. I never know when to take something seriously, especially with things like head bumps or possible concussions. Ask him to tell us what are the signs that it's something that we shouldn't just shake off and actually needs medical attention.
Okay. First is mechanism. So, once again, I'll differentiate the mechanism. I'll take Shelly's example of her son who plays sports. A mechanism where, he kind of like is roughhousing and his head, accidentally bumps the side of a couch because his friends are wrestling and he feels completely fine and he's going about his day, versus a sports hit where he's unable, he has to come out of the game. And And you want to take seriously any head injury that develops symptoms in the first 24 hours. Children are unique from adults in that they can have delayed symptoms even from a significant head injury. So it's not uncommon that a young athlete or prepubertal athlete or even an early teenager athlete will sustain some kind of injury in a game, finish the game, they seem fine, and then hours later or the next day they have headache, irritability, fatigue, and symptoms. Those are all things to take seriously and get evaluated. Concussions are brain cell injury, bottom line, even without getting knocked out. And so it warrants taking seriously how to manage the first 3 days and then the week and then the second week. And there are integrative things you can do that support brain cell recovery, things like magnesium and omega-3s. And so those are kind of the quick and easy ways that parents can go, okay, I should take this seriously.
Right. Okay. So look out for those symptoms in particular, and maybe, again, trust your instincts. And if you have any trepidation, call your pediatrician.
Most pediatricians are pretty well versed now in concussion protocols. This has been out in the literature now for a solid 10 years about that we should be approaching this a very specific way. So most pediatricians are pretty well versed in this.
Right. Well, every time you say something, I have 10 more questions that come into my mind, but I'm going to let them go for now. Maybe we'll have you back again. But before we do, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your personal concierge practice. I know you are starting something relatively new. I think it would be of interest to a lot of people listening because so many times, I don't want to go into our healthcare system in this country and get political here, but so many times I know you're trying to reach your doctor. You're getting somebody in another country, you can't get through. It's very frustrating. I know here in Florida, we tend to lean a little into concierge medicine every so often. So tell us what it is, and what you're doing and why you're doing it.
So I have a regular traditional office practice. About 17 years ago, I started a concierge pediatric practice here locally in Denver as a way to bridge the gap between parental access and getting a rapid response and keeping kids out of the ER. As a pediatric ER doctor for more than 15 years, it was clear to me that 80% of PDR visits were just driven by lack of ability to reach somebody or parental anxiety and lack of input, not because the child actually had an emergency. And the frustration level the gap between those two things is very high. Mm-hmm. Over the last 5 years, I've really started to lean into the concierge practice as more of a full service primary care product, which I offer locally. So in person, we're mobile. We go to people's homes. So that's here in Denver.
That's great.
But the demand was coming in also from people outside. Like, we really need somebody who we can reach, even though you're not seeing us in person, but we have complex questions. We want to delve into deeper issues around integrative care, behavior, development, nutrition, ADHD, all these things that most pediatricians, and myself included, are well versed in, but simply don't have the space or time in a traditional office setting. And then to further bridge that gap, we are developing and launching a subscription parent platform that is a month-to-month, but very affordable, that offers this also idea. We have an entire library of content around the highest demand and biggest pain points that parents come to us with on all of those deep topics around development, ADHD, behavior, sleep, growth, development, all of those things, as well as live calls twice a week that are open-end and subject-based, as well as a 24-hour question forum to be able to really address people's questions in a way that they just don't have the ability to when you go for a 5 to 10 minute appointment using your insurance in an office-based practice. So we're developing all of those things. For people who are interested in more one-on-one concierge type of relationship, you can go to my website, which is chickensoupdenver.com.
Love that.
You can also message me. My IG is Dr. Michael Milobsky, and we do answer our DMs on there as well and can answer questions about that. And then you'll find me on Instagram at Dr. Michael Milobsky. The podcast is Your Kids Will Be Fine, which is the way I try to counsel parents. And Yeah, and we're really excited about all of these things to be able to bridge the gap between what parents increasingly want, but you're not going to get from an AI search or a Google search the same way you're going to get from an experienced pediatrician who has 30 years of taking care of children, as well as and a parent of 7. Those are, oftentimes what you find needs to be translated and interpreted in a way from someone who can do that for you, and that's what we're trying to offer.
Well, firstly, I'm thinking we should clone you because we need a lot of you, Dr. Michael Milobskys. But this is a wonderful service, and I think so very much needed. We're going to put the information on our website as well, and we will put it out on our Instagram at the MOOBment so that everybody knows where to get in touch with you. Actually, I have really so many questions every time you say something, but one of the things I did want to ask you about was that Googling. I know that we all, the first thing we do is we go out there and we Google, and now with AI, my head hurts. What does this mean? I mean, is it something just in a nutshell? You mentioned rapid round here. Is there something in a nutshell that we should do or we shouldn't do? I mean, is it dangerous to do that? Or
listen, I think we should all recognize that information is democratized. The truth of the matter is that given the advancement of AI, you're likely to get very accurate information when you put in a question. The difference is that when a parent who's worried puts in a question, let's just say most people are actually using an AI platform way ahead of Google now. And
right.
You're getting information it's accurate, most likely, because we can all agree that is inaccuracy is not the problem, but what you're getting is a huge load of information that's unfiltered and uncurated to be able to really understand your particular issue, need, and how to apply it. And that's still not replaceable in a way that's right. What an experienced pediatrician and parent pediatrician is going to be able to do, is bridge that gap between that load of unfiltered information that's hard to know what to do with and how it really applies to you in your situation with your needs, and how to force multiply that in a way that's effective. I think that's the issue.
Makes total sense. I mean, yeah, I think we all need to learn how to rein it in and use it when we need to, but not rely on it completely. Right. And you're right.
Right.
All right.
And maybe we'll be replaced. Someday AI will approximate us and me, and then you won't need it. But right now, I still think it's necessary.
Yeah. You know what? I do think that we will also get better at asking the right questions. That's a lot
Sure.
of it is, if we ask too general a question or whatever it is, maybe we will get better trained, or not you and me, but like our next generation, because they're growing up with this. So they're going to learn how to tailor it and use it to their benefit, hopefully.
Absolutely.
For all
Absolutely.
good things. Anyway, I am so glad that you joined us today. I think you have been so helpful to so many people.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully we'll have you back again and ask the rest of our questions, because our listeners sent in a lot of really valid, wonderful things. And I will encourage everybody to reach out to you on your website, your podcast, your Instagram, get more information. I think the service that you're offering for those who can avail themselves of it is just incredible. We all just, we need that feedback, and it's not always easy to get it, and on a personal level. And so kudos to you. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And so thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing. This is such a needed platform at the right time for the right people. And I am absolutely thrilled to be here and can't wait to come back.
Thank you. And before we leave, I'm going to tell everybody, as I always do, to hug your boys, trust your instincts, and remember that where all boy moms and those who love them belong is right here.
Hey, hey.